All right, let's talk about something that trips up almost everyone in sales: objections. We're going to completely change how you see them, taking you from a place of fear to a position of, well, total control. Let's get into it. So what if I told you that hearing a no or an objection is actually one of the best things that can happen during a sales call? Seriously, the way we've all been taught to think about objections as these huge roadblocks, these deal killers, it's just wrong. They are not the real problem. They're just signals that we've been taught to misunderstand. And here's the thing you've got to get. When a prospect throws an objection at you, they are not fighting you. They're not even fighting your offer. They are fighting something inside their own head. A fear of change, a fear of making the wrong choice, or maybe they just don't trust you yet. So our job isn't to fight back. It's to understand what's really going on and help them get past that fear. To do that, we have to start with a huge mindset shift. We need to stop seeing objections as rejection and start seeing them for what they really are: engagement. This right here, this is the heart of it. Objections are buying signals. I mean, think about it for a second. If they didn't care, if they weren't interested, they'd just say, thanks, but no thanks, and hang up. The fact that they're raising a concern means they are invested. They're picturing themselves using your solution, and they're kicking the tires. A prospect who has zero objections, that's the one you should be worried about. Silence? Now, that's the real deal killer. And this is so brilliant because it shows you what's really going on under the hood. So you hear it's too expensive, and what do? You jump in to defend the price, right? But what they're almost always saying is, hey, you haven't shown me enough value to make this price make sense. Or my favorite, I need to think about it. That's almost never about needing more time. It's just a polite way of saying, I'm not sold yet. Or more importantly, I don't fully trust you yet. Okay, so once that mindset clicks into place, you need a solid method. Let's get into the two tools that are going to let you handle pretty much any objection with total confidence. We'll call them the frame and the formula. Before you even think about handling an objection, you have to win what we call the battle for the frame. A weak frame means you're always on your back foot. The prospect is in charge and every little concern turns into a painful negotiation. But a strong frame? That's when you're the expert. You're the one leading the conversation. And when you have that strong frame, objections stop being attacks and they just become questions, simple requests for more information. And this one sentence, man, this is probably the most powerful way to set that strong frame. Just saying this at the beginning of a call completely changes the vibe. It tells them you're not some desperate salesperson. You're a consultant. You're an expert here to help them figure out if this is the right fit. It just lowers all their defenses. So you've got the frame locked in, now you can roll out the formula. This is the 5-step playbook that the pros use every single time. First, you acknowledge what they said so they know you heard them. Then, and this is huge, you isolate the objection to make sure it's the real and only issue. Third, you clarify to dig down to the root of it. Fourth, you bridge back to the value. And finally, and please do not forget this, you close again. Let's zoom in on that isolate step because it is absolutely critical. You have to use a phrase just like this one. Why? Because it stops you from playing objection whack-a-mole. You know the game, right? You solve one problem and another one just pops right up. By asking, besides the price, is there anything else? You're cornering the real problem. You're forcing them to admit that this one thing is the final boss. Once you beat it, you win. Okay, so you've used the formula, you've isolated the objection. Now comes the master level skill, decoding what they're actually saying, because it's usually not what you think. Look, it doesn't matter what they say. It could be one of 100 different excuses, but it almost always boils down to one of these 4 things. It's either about money, which is never actually about the money, it's about the value. Or it's about time, which means there's no urgency. It could be about trust, meaning they feel like there's a risk. Or it's about priority, which is really just a nice way of saying they're afraid of the change you're asking them to make. Your job is to figure out which bucket it falls into. But here's the tricky part. Sometimes people won't even tell you the real objection. It's way easier to say, I'll think about it, than it is to say, you know what, I just don't trust you. So you have to watch out for these red flags, these vague phrases, or when they suddenly get super polite, or they start blaming some partner or board that you can't talk to. These are almost always smoke screens hiding the real issue, which 9 times out of 10 is trust. So how do you get past that smoke screen? You have to ask a calm, direct question that gives them permission to be honest. Something like this. It's not aggressive, it just cuts through the noise and shows them you're trying to understand, not just trying to sell. It opens the door for them to tell you what's really bothering them. Okay, and once you get the real objection, you have to figure out if it's coming from their head or their heart. Is it logical or emotional? This is a trap so many people fall into. They treat every objection the same. A logical objection just needs more information, data, facts, an ROI calculator. But an emotional objection, that needs reassurance. It needs empathy. If someone is scared and you throw a spreadsheet at them, you're gonna lose that deal every single time. All right, let's get into the stuff that really separates the pros from the amateurs. We're talking about taking care of objections before they even happen and then closing the deal with total confidence. The single best way to handle an objection? Make sure it never even comes up. This is an elite skill called preemption. So instead of waiting for the price objection, you show them the clear ROI up front. Before they can say they're skeptical, you say, a lot of our best clients were skeptical at first too. When you proactively address the fears you know they have in the back of their mind, it's like you're reading their mind. It builds an insane amount of trust. Now, we've talked a lot about what to do, but honestly, knowing what not to do, well, that can save you from yourself. These are the classic unforced errors that just sink deals. Don't argue with them. You're just telling them they're wrong, and nobody likes that. Don't get defensive and start over-explaining everything. It just screams lack of confidence. And like we said, never ever answer an objection until you have isolated it first. Just avoid these mistakes, and you're already ahead of 90% of people out there. Let's make this super practical. So when you hear, it's too expensive, the wrong way is to start listing features. The right way is to acknowledge it and bridge back to value. When you hear, I need to think, don't pressure them. Instead, ask what specific part they need to think about. And when they hit you with the partner excuse, don't question their authority. That's a disaster. Instead, say, of course, and then turn them into your champion to help you prepare for that conversation. Okay, this is so important, and almost everyone gets it wrong. What do you do after you've perfectly handled their concern? You don't just sit there in awkward silence. The moment you resolve an objection, you must immediately, and I mean immediately, pivot back to the close. Great, so now that we've cleared that up, let's get you started. Any hesitation right here can kill the entire deal. All right, let's wrap this up by zooming all the way out to the single most important mindset you can have through this whole process. It's about shifting from chasing deals to filtering for the right fit. This right here, this is the whole game. Your job isn't to twist arms or convince every single person you talk to. It's to find the people that you are uniquely positioned to help. And when you think about it that way, handling objections isn't a fight. It's just a process of discovery to see if you're a good fit for each other. And sometimes the answer is no, and that's totally fine. And that's the big idea I want to leave you with. Stop seeing objections as these giant brick walls designed to stop you. They're not. They're filters. They're there to help you and the prospect figure out if this is the right path. Once you truly believe that, the pressure just melts away, and you can have a real, authentic conversation that leads to the right outcome for everyone.